Hey, friends. So glad you're back today for Dallas Metro Podcast. Hey, we have a very, very special guest in with us today. Matter of fact, I'm gonna play a song that's gonna mean something especially to him. Recognize that song, brother? You've heard that song once or twice, right?
I have, yeah.
You know, when long before I met you, and I want to talk about you. Let's talk. This is Barry Stokes. He and his wife Lori have been friends before Metro ever started.
Yeah,
for sure. And so, tell us a little about your family, Barry.
Well, we're approaching our 45th wedding anniversary.
Praise God.
With Laurie, we've had got 2 adult kids, a couple of grandkids, and yeah, we're blessed and doing well. That song, it's really strange you play that song because I was sitting in the lobby of this studio, waiting for my turn to come in here, and I was just thinking about it was a studio very similar to this that we recorded that theme song for Outdoor Trails, which was probably 30-ish years ago, something like that. But even back in the day, it was a really nice studio. We had a full country band, and they let me sing one line in my own theme song. So if you listen all the way to the end, you'll hear one line that they let me sing. But this brought back a lot of memories being in a studio like this.
It was through Outdoor Trails I was exposed to you. You know, I would like to classify myself as an avid fisherman, but I'd have to fish more if I was going to be an avid fisherman.
I've seen some fish pictures.
But, well, I do like the sport. It is a lot of fun. But I, particularly in those days, didn't fish much. My kids are still young, so doing the ministry, family, that doesn't leave a whole lot of fishing time, right? So the only time that I got to fish was on Saturday nights. Saturday nights at 10:30, I tuned into Outdoor Trails.
Yep.
And before we get into the Outdoor Trails, tell us a little bit about your history. How did you get into the whole fishing thing?
Well, it's funny. I grew up always being infatuated with broadcasting. I used to literally go to Texas Rangers baseball games when I first started driving at 16 years old.
Oh, you're talking about the old ballpark.
I went to the old Arlington Stadium.
Yeah.
And I took a cassette tape recorder, and I would buy the cheapest general admission ticket I could find, $3, sit in the farthest upper corner of the outfield, and I would broadcast the game into a cassette recorder.
Funny.
So I've always had that feel for broadcasting and that desire to broadcast all the way back to high school. But I graduated from Eastern Hills High School in Fort Worth, went to Oklahoma Christian College in Edmond, Oklahoma, took all my journalism and broadcasting courses, got my degree in television, radio, film, broadcasting, and then just kind of from there I started at the bottom of the totem pole. I was doing high school football play-by-play for some radio stations in Oklahoma City, interning for KTVY, Channel 4 in Oklahoma City television, and then started kind of working my way up until I finally worked for WBAP radio here in Dallas-Fort Worth for many years, and talked them into doing a fishing talk show, and that actually lasted for 15 years. And from there, it just kind of the natural progression went into television. And when you started watching me, I was actually on one television station here in Dallas, Channel 27, KDFI TV here in Dallas. And then from there, it went to Home Sports Entertainment, which was a cable network. And then from there to multiple cable networks, and then from there to the Sportsman Channel and nationwide, and it just kind of progressed from there. So it's God just kind of led me by the hand all the way through that process, and I just kind of followed along.
Then after Outdoor Trails, you began the new TV program for Fox Sports Southwest.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. That was one of the steps.
Yeah. Hooked. Let's Fish TV. right?
Well, actually, it was the Southwest Outdoors Report.
That's right. Okay.
On one cable network,
Right,
Fox
okay.
Sports Southwest. And then when we ultimately decided to take it nationwide, we had to change the name because it wasn't just Southwest anymore.
Right,
So
right, right.
we changed it to Let's Fish TV and carried that on. And I spent 38 years in the business. It was a blessed career, favored career all the way up and down the line, and just ended it at the end of last year, January 1. I got my ticket out to fish for fun.
Yeah. Most people don't know that your camera woman, for a lot of those years was your lovely wife, Lori.
For about the last 10 years,
Yeah.
we just decided that we didn't want to be apart
Yeah.
that much. We get along great through a lot of ups and downs in our 45-year marriage and a lot of good counseling along the way. I highly recommend marriage counseling to everybody that's married. But yeah, we just decided that we wanted to travel together, that I didn't want to go off and leave her at home for a month at a time that it took for me to be on the road. And I wound up being on the road 6 months a year and home 6 months a year. So we just decided we wanted to be together. So she left real estate, learned how to work. She didn't even know how to work a camera at all. Learned how to run a broadcast camera and all the mics and gear that goes with it. Learned how to fly a drone. Learned how to shoot video from a drone. I couldn't fly a drone. If you put one on this table and put a gun to my head, I couldn't launch one. But she learned how to fly one, and so she flies circles around me while I fish, and shoots drone video. So, yeah, it's been a great adventure, and we've had some fun times. Some hard days. I can tell you about some of the really tough days out there when we didn't know if we could keep doing this anymore. It got so hard at times. But
And people don't realize that, see, if I go fishing and I don't catch anything, nobody gets upset. But
yeah.
when you're a professional, they expect you to catch fish, brother.
You know, that was actually one of the things that really brought my career to a close, is I just wore down under 38 years of the stress of launching a boat and knowing that not catching fish
Was it an option?
was not an option.
Exactly.
I had to stay there until I caught enough fish to do a 30-minute television episode. And sometimes that took half a day. And literally there were times it took 4 days. And you were with me a little bit on the water, so you saw a few hours of that. But there were many of those days when 16-hour days on the water, from very first crack of daylight till the last light of day, were very ordinary for us. And you do 4 of those back to back, and it'll wear you down in a hurry. Yeah. So I feel my age a lot of those days.
Yeah, that's what I tell people all the time. The age is not the problem; it's the miles. Those.
Yeah. Yep.
I remember. I really hadn't thought anything about that. I mean, we've been friends for a lot of years, and you're obviously a very good fisherman. So I just assumed when you go out, you catch fish, right?
Yeah.
Until I got a text from you one day going, Clay, been fishing 3 days, hadn't caught a fish. Would you pray? I never had anybody ask me to pray to catch fish before. I went, you know what? I can do that.
I forgot about that.
That was an eye opener for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, there were more than one occasion when I really kind of hit the end of my rope. And, you know, we laugh about it and kid about it, but in those moments,
yeah,
I remember the bottom of my career happened about 5 years ago, and it kind of was the beginning of the end, because we had done this for, 33, 34 years already. We wound up over there in North Carolina, foreign territory, never been on this water before. We had a couple of days to get an episode of our television show done before the July 4th holiday hit, and we didn't get it done. We didn't catch fish for a couple of days, and so we had to stay there until we did catch fish. Well, this was in Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, which is a big-time tourist destination. And so here came all the pleasure boats and jet skis and wakeboards and all the pleasure boats, and literally it became a nightmare out there on the water trying to do shows. And then the heat wave came, and it got up to 104 degrees. And so after 4 full days of being on the water and not catching fish, we literally came back to our hotel room at 11 o'clock at night after the 4th day, sweaty, tired, dirty, exhausted. Both of us just fell backwards onto a hotel room bed. We kind of looked at each other and went, somebody's got to pray because we can't do this anymore. And we were literally at the end of our ropes, and it was not funny at that moment. It was not funny at all. And I called another one of my best friends and asked he and his wife if they would right there on the phone pray for us just to get us through this trip. And that really began about a 5-year unwinding process of kind of backing out. I brought a young guy on board, worked with him for a few years. He ultimately bought all the equipment, the rights to the show, the network contracts, sponsor contracts, bought us out. And then as of January 1 of this year, I get to go fishing for fun. But there were a lot of those days when it really was not fun at all.
Yeah, you mentioned you and Lori have been married for 45 years. As you know, in America today, 50% of all marriages end in divorce. And then every time you remarry after that, it increases by about another 20%.
Right.
So there's probably some other people out there that didn't seek advice, and they're in trouble today. What would you tell them?
Swallow your pride. Get yourself to a qualified Christian counselor.
Might want to say that last part there again.
Qualified Christian counselor. Yeah. That's 3 words, and every one of them is very important. They're not your pastor,
right?
Not your youth minister, not your buddy.
And it's not that pastors or whoever can help us. They're our pastor. You need somebody that this is their niche. Trained
and does this every day of their life, all day, and has seen it all, done it all. And
it doesn't matter what you say, you're not going to surprise them.
Exactly.
They've seen this before, and they know how to help.
I can honestly tell you this. Seriously, 45 years didn't come easy, but I can promise you that we would not still be married now had it not been for 2, in particular, critical, qualified Christian counselors that nursed us through some of the crisis moments in our marriage. Everybody's going to have them. Every marriage is going to have those critical moments when you don't know whether you're going to stay together or not. And we didn't. We didn't know if we were going to stay together. And the Lord led us to just the right woman who was able to talk straight to both of us and got us through about a 1-year period, crisis period. And that was the hurdle that we got over that allowed us to now celebrate what will be our 45th wedding anniversary. Would never have happened without that counselor. Never.
And you, part of that has to do with commitment. Obviously, you were committed to Lori, and Lori was committed to you. And so you were willing to do whatever it takes to make that relationship not just work. You know, I believe the Lord doesn't want us to survive. I've lived in survival mode before. It's not a way to do life. It will make you old before your time. The Lord wants us to thrive, and that even that's in our marriage.
You know, after this long of being married, and it doesn't apply just to marriage. It applies to a lot of facets of life. I've worked with a lot of addicts and a lot of alcoholics and a lot of people who've worked their way through some really, really difficult life circumstances. I've got one key that tells me whether I believe they're going to get well and survive whatever it is, the marriage, the abusive situation, the alcohol, the addiction, whatever it is. And that's, you said it, is when they get to the bottom and are willing to say, I'll do anything to stay married. I'll do anything to get well. I'll do anything to get off drugs and alcohol. When they get to the point where there are no ifs attached to it, I know they got a great chance to get well. But short of that, I hear lots of those ifs. You know,
Yeah.
they want to do it their way.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll do everything except.
Right. If
But
this happens, if this happens.
If
yeah.
she'll do this, I'll
Yeah,
do. There,
right,
when I start hearing those ifs, the odds of them surviving that go
Right.
way down. But when it's I'll do anything, then I know that they got a great chance.
Yeah, one of the things that I always encourage people is that this is in life in general. You got to have a relationship with the Lord. Until you have that relationship, then nothing else is you're not going to take the steps that are necessary to solve whatever your problem is. Once you have done that, now you're ready for step 2. And okay, now you've got things right with the Lord. Okay, how do I make things right, either with this other person, or how do I get past this addiction? How do I get out of this bad relationship, this unhealthy thing I'm in? And that's where you need somebody professional, someone that can. You might say they're speaking to your mind, but honestly, they're speaking to your heart. You know, how can I see these changes? Hey, we mentioned outdoor trails, and that was how I first got promo, hooked on fishing, not on drugs. And you were going to meet at Barlow's Tackle Store in Richardson, Texas, on 75. And you asked kids to draw a picture about being hooked on fishing, not on drugs, and bring it to Barlow's. That was on a Sunday afternoon. So I called you, and of course, obviously, we hadn't met at this time. And I said, hey, man, could I bring 50 kids to this? And you said, well, sure. And so we came. And that was my first time to meet you. Tell me about that day. Share it with our people.
Well, again, we'd never met, so I had no idea who you were, what the ministry was, anything. And, you know, the thought of 50 kids rolling into a tackle store was a little bit overwhelming thought to me. It was a fairly large tackle store, but it wasn't Walmart.
Right.
You know.
Right.
But yeah, I just remember so many of those kids coming in there, and they obviously came from a very different place in the culture than I'm used to. And you knew those kids, they knew you, they respected you, you knew every one of them by name, their stories. So I was just impressed by who those kids were, how respectful they were when they came in there. And actually somewhere, I think you still have, and I may even still have, you sent me a couple of pictures that still are floating around. That was back in, 1980 something?
Maybe 89, something like that, I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So those pictures are 30, however many years old now. And it's funny, I remember one of those, I don't know if she was actually there, but one of those kids that came along in some of the camp sessions that we played music for in the years following that was Ebony. And now I saw the podcast with you and Ebony, your I guess board director.
Yeah, chairman of the board.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's just that's an amazing story.
I need to go back and look at that picture because I'm thinking she probably was in that group
Yeah.
because she was riding a bus
Isn't that
at
something?
that time. Well, here's another connection for you. My granddaughter greeted you when you got to the studio, right?
Yep.
Well, her mom was a child at that time, and she's in
Unbelievable.
that picture.
Now you're making me feel old, brother. Now we're getting there.
And then we, the Lord connected Lori and yourself and your kids to our ministry. I remember one time you did something for Zebco. I think Zebco's 50th anniversary or something like that. Took some kids fishing. And, for our kids, it's the whole fishing thing is it's.
We had some of your Metro kids on our television show at one point.
Yeah.
I think maybe had the winners of some of those contests and that we actually took them fishing on the show. And I actually still have every episode of our show that was ever shot.
Oh, that's cool.
I want to say 600 and some episodes of Outdoor Trails, and then another 600 and something of the Fox and Southwest Outdoors and Let's Fish episodes. So 12 to 1,300 episodes. So somewhere in my archives on a hard drive, I still have that episode.
So you moved that stuff from tape to digital. Good for
did.
you, brother.
I hired Brady, my son, one summer while he was in college to come home and spend the entire summer working for me, taking those giant 3/4-inch videotapes and playing them in real time onto a hard drive, a converter. And so, yeah, we captured every one of those digitally, and they're on multiple hard drives, literally in my office at home right now.
And you, I remember you came a couple of times, or more than a couple of times, came several times, spoke to our our indoor program, and later when we started a church, you became a part of the church, and then your family came and served at summer camp with us. So tell us, what was that like for you and your family?
Those are literally some of my family's best memories together, and I promise you, my kids, Bailey and Brady, will tell you the same thing. Those were during their kind of formative years, those middle school to high school age years when you're kind of learning who you are, and getting to come serve and play in that band and play music for those kids, and to see how engaged those kids were and jumping up and down and singing and dancing and all that was just an incredible blessing and so much fun. And my family just loved every minute of getting to do that. We did that for many years.
Yeah. Yeah, I've watched you, even particularly with the Let's Fish, even when it was Fox Sports Southwest Report. I probably said that wrong, but anyway, the early days of that, you started a segment on there every week, closing out, and each week there was something the Lord laid on your heart. So, and I was always impressed with that. And I thought of a verse that I wanted to share today, and something, Barry, that we do each week with the podcast is I try to give the nugget to the people, something that our viewers can listen to. And the verse I thought of was the Exodus chapter 4, verse number 2. It says, "Then the Lord asked him, 'What is that in your hand?' A shepherd's staff," Moses replied. So what was the Lord communicating there? Well, he was saying, "What I'm going to use what's in your hand." Now, to you, it's just a shepherd's staff. Well, I think that's what the Lord has done for you, even though I know you started out in broadcasting. And most people would think of you as a fisherman. I think you was somebody in broadcasting because that's how I knew you, in the early days. But you took what was in your hand, which was a fishing rod, and you have used it to reach people, literally, particularly the last few years, across the country and impact their life. There's people out there right now, they're probably going, "Yeah, I'm not a pastor. I don't have a pulpit," and yet they have something in their hand that they could use. How would you encourage them to do that today?
Well, let me see if I can make this the shortest version I can. So I was troubled for many of those years by the fact that I had this large audience of guys, fishermen,
Right.
and some girls that love the sport. But I was troubled by the fact that I wanted to use it for the Lord somehow, some way, and I just struggled with how to do that. And I remember it after so many years of trying to figure it out. And of course, when you're on network television, you have to be careful about what you can say, or you'll make the wrong people upset if you hear what I'm saying.
Yes.
So I was just struggling with that. And I remember one day after a church at Stonewater Church, where I go in Granbury, I went down to the front and I asked one of my closest buddies, who was the worship minister at the time, to pray with me about that, because I just wanted to find some way to honor the Lord with what I was doing. And so born out of that prayer and that conversation that day was a little segment at the end of the show called Stuff That Matters. And we did it for about the last 6 or 7 years of the existence of the show. But I made a deal with God that said, with Holy Spirit, I said, if you will tell me what to say for those 45 seconds, I'll say what you tell me. You don't give me anything, I'm not going to invent it. I'm not going to just think stuff up. And faithfully, for those last 6 or 7 years, times 39 episodes a year, something would happen during the week that would make an impact on me, that would bring something to my mind, that would light something up that I could share with my audience. Something usually had nothing to do with fishing. It was the Lord's time, 45 seconds at the end of the show. And so I just repeated what Holy Spirit told me to say. And I can't tell you how many times after that I would go to a trade show or a fishing expo of some kind, a Bass Pro Shops. I would appear at these Bass Pro Shops for autograph signing sessions, and some guy would come up to me and say, I was one day away from divorcing my wife, and your Stuff That Matters said, can you hang in one more day? And I listened to you, and I hung in one more day, and then we stayed together. And another guy had said, I had just lost my job, and you had talked about on Stuff That Matters that your job is not who you are. And he said, it literally changed my perspective on the depression I was feeling from losing my job. So just those stories tell you that God's faithful. You know, when he gives you something, he'll see it through. So yes, every one of us have got a sphere of influence, and we've got to find some way to speak the Lord into the people that we have influence over.
And we all, as you just mentioned, we may not be in front of a camera, but we're in front of people.
Absolutely.
Which is the same thing.
Yep.
It's just one-on-one. And we run into people every day, and people got problems, and they're looking for an answer. And it's amazing. You know, if we ask every day, if you say, Lord, okay, I'm walking out the door, I don't want to walk out alone. You know, help me. What is it I can do to be a blessing today? And when your prayer is that, which is what your prayer was, then he'll give you opportunities.
One guy came up to me after that and said, you know, I took your Stuff That Matters to heart. I wanted to do something like that. So he decided he was going to show up 15 minutes early for work every day and bring a dozen donuts and go to the break room. So he went in the break room 15 minutes before time to clock in with a dozen donuts, and he would just sit there and talk to whoever came in there and give him a donut.
Yeah.
And he prayed, and he used that for his ministry in his workplace, born out of Stuff That Matters. Yeah. It's like, if you can do that, I can do this.
Hey, that's good.
So there you go.
You know, we're believing God for an incredible miracle right now. The Lord's laid on our hearts to put this next generation, and we haven't talked about that today, but the Lord has raised up a new generation of leaders at Metro. You've seen that.
Yep.
So we need to put them in a position to win. And one of the dreams the Lord had given to Barbara and I was to build long-term facilities. And here's the big part. It's not just building. It's doing it absolutely debt-free. Our goal is to build a ministry center, a warehouse, prayer chapel, secure parking for our vehicles. And we're believing God for a miracle, believing to do it debt-free. If you were telling people, hey, why should I get involved today, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that I'm 65 years old, and I've seen a lot of ministries, and I've been a part of a lot of ministries, but I haven't seen very many in my 65 years of life that have the kind of grassroots, street-level influence that Metro has. And I'll even take it, one step further. And born out of your Metro came Fort Worth Metro. And I've seen the exact same thing happen in Fort Worth that I've seen happen in Dallas, is people's lives literally being changed and kids being rescued from horrifically difficult circumstances and turned into warriors for the kingdom. And you don't get that in very many places. You don't get that kind of impact. You don't get that kind of bang for your buck in very many places. There are some, but I've seen it. I've witnessed it. I've been a part of it firsthand.
Barry, I really appreciate you being here today.
Yep.
Appreciate your friendship. Last year was when Barbara went to be with the Lord. You and Lori very kindly invited me to be at your house. Took me in as a friend. I'll never forget that. Thank you, friend.
It was a privilege.
Hey, we're so glad that you joined with us today. You know the miracle that we're believing for. We're believing God that He's going to take and provide for these facilities, and we're going to do it absolutely debt-free. Go to our webpage, dallasmetro.org. Look on there under All In. All In is the campaign. In there you'll see the conceptual drawings that Michael has drawn for us. And would you consider today, would you consider being part of a miracle? And go to that donate button. Donate today to Dallas Metro. You're going to help us put the next generation in a position to win. And I firmly believe that they'll reach more boys and girls for Christ than we've reached the last 35 years. Hey, friends, thanks for joining us. See you next week. God bless you.